right, so let us look at another kingdom, and this kingdom is called Protoctista. Members of this group or members of this kingdom are actually called protists. So every time I'll be referring to any of these members, I'll basically use the word protists. So in this session, we want to understand basically the general description of this kingdom, or what organisms fall into this kingdom, and why these organisms actually fall there. What are those things that make them to be classified under this kingdom? But of course, we start this session with a scenario. So here, at a science fair, you are tasked to educate visitors about microscopic life in ponds and forests. You have a guide that shows samples of water and soil under microscopes, revealing a variety of tiny organisms, some green and swimming with whip-like tails, others shapeless, and some causing health concerns for visitors and wildlife. The guide explains these belonged to kingdom Protoctista, a diverse group with unique traits, and highlights their roles in nature and human life. So this scenario basically illustrates that these protists can actually live in a variety of habitats. We have those that we can find in the ponds, and then we have those that we can find in the forest, and we basically need a microscope to look at them, and they carry out different functions in the environment or in nature generally, and some are actually beneficial to humans. Okay, that is what the scenario shows us here. So the questions are, what is kingdom Protoctista? And name 3 examples of organisms found in this kingdom. And then describe the general characteristics of Protoctista that distinguish them from bacteria and kingdom Nera. And then explain one way protists can benefit the environment and one way they can harm humans or animals, using an example from the scenario that we have had. Okay, so protists and eukaryotic organisms, the meaning of that is that they have membrane-bound organelles, or they have a membrane-bound nucleus. That's why we categorize them as eukaryotic organisms. Okay, that's the first description. The next thing that you need to know about these protists is that we cannot place them. Okay, these are organisms that we cannot place under animals, plants, or even fungi. So that's because of the unique characteristics that they have. Some of these characteristics are cross-cutting, meaning that you can have protists that have characteristics that make them more like fungi, or you have characteristics that make them more like plants, or characteristics that make them more like animals. So that you can still not place them there because they have other characteristics that make them belong somewhere else. So that's why we are saying that they are eukaryotic organisms that cannot be classified under plants, animals, or even fungi. So we basically can refer to them as leftovers. Okay, so they have different characteristics. They have different ways of life. They carry out life processes in different ways. So the examples include amoeba, eglena, plasmodium, and then paramecia, and then trypanosoma. Each of the organism, we have SP to indicate species. Okay, we have SP to indicate species. So that SP refers to species. Okay, so you can see the paramecium here, the trypanosoma, and then the amoeba, then the declina. Okay, so like I said, they have characteristics that are cross-cutting that are not very distinct to place them in any of the, whether it is animals or plants or even the fungus. So we have those that have closer resemblance to animals. So we can call them animal-like protists, and these are the protozoans. And then we have those that are looking that are more like plants. We have the algae, and then we have those that are more like fungus. So here we shall see the examples later. Okay. So those that that are more like plants, we have the algae, and the algae can have 3 phyla. So we have Orophyta, Phyophyta, Rhodophyta. Okay, and then the protozoa, we have Rhizopoda, we have Cleophora, and then we have Zeomastigina, and then Apicomplexa. And then those that look like fungus, we have Umycota. Okay, so the examples are noted, and we shall look at each of these categories later on in our subsequent presentations. So what are the general characteristics of these protists? One is that they can be multicellular or unicellular, meaning that we have those that only have one cell and those that have very many cells. Okay, so like we said, they are eukaryotic, meaning that they have a true nucleus that has a nuclear membrane, and they have membrane-bound organelles. They have different ways of nutrition. Some are photosynthetic, meaning that they have chloroplasts and they can actually capture sunlight and make their own food. And then we have those that depend on other organisms for food, and we say they are heterotrophic. Okay, and then we have those that are mixotrophs, meaning that they can choose between being autotrophic or heterotrophic. Some have asexual reproduction, while others have sexual reproduction, while others actually have both types of reproduction. They have different structures for locomotion. We have those that use pseudopodia, we have those that use cilia, and then we have those that do not actually move. Okay, so they use those that actually don't move are the ones that we call sessile. Okay, so we have some of the members of this group exist in groups, what you can call colonies, and then we have others that live alone. So we call them, we say that they live a solitary life, or they exist solitarily. We mostly find them in damp areas or areas where you have moisture. So we find them in aquatic environments or moist areas. And let us look at the scenario once again. The scenario talks about a science fair where you are tasked to educate visitors about microscopic life in ponds and forest. So basically, you are looking at organisms that we cannot see using our naked eyes, and therefore we need a microscope to be able to look at them. So to be able to look at them, we collect samples of water and then soil, and then look at these samples through the microscope. And using the microscope, we will be able to see a number of these organisms. Okay, you'll be able to see organisms that are green. Some are green. You have those that can actually swim with a whip-like tail, and then you have those that are completely shapeless, and then we have those that can actually cause diseases. Okay, so your aim, your task is to basically explain these things to the visitors. Okay, you have a guide that will help you and in explaining the things to the visitors. Okay, so that guide basically has members or organisms that belong to the kingdom Protoctista. Okay, and we have already seen that members of this group are actually diverse. They have different characteristics, and some of those characteristics have already been mentioned, that they are microscopic, and some are green. We have those that can actually swim. We have those that do not have any particular shape. We have those that can cause diseases to humans, and also warm the life. Okay, so we start the first question, which is that what is kingdom Protista? Or what is kingdom Protoctista? And name 3 examples of organisms found in this kingdom. We already know that this kingdom consists of a number of organisms that have different characteristics. The major characteristics are that, one, they can be multicellular or they can be unicellular, but we can say mostly they are unicellular. Okay, and then the second point is that they are eukaryotic, meaning that they have membrane-bound organelles. And then that also means that they have a nuclear membrane around the nucleus. The third thing that you can point out is that they can actually live in different environments. We can find them in water, we can find them in soil, and so. But the most important characteristic there is that they love moist areas. They love moist areas. Some of them are parasites. Some of them can actually live on their own. So we can say some of them are free living. Some of them can make their own food. So that description can be that kingdom Protoctista is a group of mostly unicellular eukaryotic organisms that live in water, moist areas, or as parasites. The examples include the amoeba, which is the one that is described as being shapeless. And then we have the ugulena. Okay, the ugulena is the one that is described in the scenario as green with the tails. And then the plasmodium is the one that actually causes health losses. Okay, according to the scenario. And then the second question is that you describe 2 general characteristics of protists that distinguish them from bacteria in kingdom Monera. This is basically to say that the bacteria belong to the kingdom Monera. So how are the bacteria actually different from the members of the protists? Remember, we said that some of the characteristics of protists are actually shared by other kingdoms, so they may not have strictly unique characteristics. Okay, so here the first point is that the protists or prototists are eukaryotic, meaning that they have a true nucleus, or they have a nucleus that have a membrane around it, and the organelles, or the structures inside the cells of the protist or the prototist are membrane bound, meaning that they have a membrane around them. Whereas for the bacteria, they are prokaryotic, meaning that they don't have a true nucleus, so they lack a nucleus, and some of the organelles, they lack some of the organelles, so they lack membrane-bound organelles. Okay, so that means that protists are actually more complex, and therefore can have processes such as photosynthesis. Okay, but this is not to say that we don't have any bacteria that can actually carry out photosynthesis. We actually have some photosynthetic bacteria or autotrophic bacteria. Okay, and then the second point we are emphasizing is that protists are they have diverse modes of nutrition. We have those that are autotrophic, they can make their own food by photosynthesis, and then we have those that are heterotrophic, that means that they feed on other organisms. The bacteria typically have simpler feeding methods, just like adsorption. So they don't have these complex processes like the prototists. Okay, so prototists can have advantages and can also have harmful impact on the environment or even on humans. And here we are emphasizing that, for example, the curricula, which carries out photosynthesis, can produce oxygen because photosynthesis gives us oxygen as a result. So that means that they contribute to production of oxygen that can be used by other aquatic organisms, including the fish. And this helps in maintaining a healthy ecosystem. The disadvantage with some of the members of this kingdom is that they can cause health concerns. And here we are talking about Plasmodium species. These ones can cause infections, especially malaria. Okay, so this malaria is a serious